Hi, I'm JeanShires's and I'm your instructor. You've been dealing with me all along and here I am. Language and culture. I love language and all its intricacies. I love the way that it's spelled. I love the way you can take big words apart, put them into look at the little pieces of it and get a clue into your culture, get a clue into human culture, particularly Western civilizations. And by that I mean languages particularly that come from Latin and Greek roots. And a great deal of our language is from that. That's why I always stress to students that it's so important that they increase their vocabularies, because that is expanding their cultural awareness. Whether they know that or not is going on, that is what goes on. So when you spell words wrong or you use the wrong word, you might be communicating, but you might be communicating things you had no idea about. So it's interesting that groups, social groups, often create their own language, their own jargon, if you will. Particularly look at a medical center, and medical centers have language that the rest of the culture is not really that aware of. More now that they've got TV shows constantly that are in a hospital setting. And it's a good place to make a TV show because there's always a lot of drama going on in a hospital. And even humor. There is particular and specific language that is used in the ER compared to what is used in OBGYN, for instance. We don't have that much trauma, as in injuries, in, say, the delivery room as we do in the emergency room. So teens, for instance, and it has been standard as long as I can think, teens create their own language. Not exclusively, of course, but teens always have buzzwords that are understood by other teens in their social group. Particularly important that they're not understood by the parents or the teachers, because when you have a group of us, you also have to have a group of them. Them is the other. They're not us. And so by having a language that's exclusive to ourselves, we have made a cohesive unit. For instance, my mother grew up, she was a teenager, young teenager during World War II. So she has Depression era type language and mottos. Waste not, want not. Most of you don't know, it goes on to say, for I may live to say, I wish I had that crust of bread that I once threw away. So we had, of course, I grew up in the 60s, so I had the language of the hippies. Because that's who we were. We wore our beads, we let our hair grow, nobody shaved their legs, and now men and women seem to shave their legs, which is interesting to me, but okay by me. So you have all these new terms. The internet has helped a great deal. When I was a teenager, there was no internet. There were barely any computers. In fact, I think I dropped out of physics twice because of coping with a computer. Being somebody who couldn't type, I found coping with a computer very difficult. Now people don't type, they key. As our language is changing, our language is probably evolving at a faster rate than any time in history. Except for language goes through big changes, as does culture go through big changes as a result of war. When the losers and the winners are mixed together, both of their cultures change. A new trend in language is American Sign Language, which our book woefully neglects when it's talking about language. It says specifically, if you can't talk, you have no language. Well, they've never been around people who are deaf and know American Sign Language. They also said that primates, chimpanzees particularly, did not have a language. Well, we have taught American Sign to many primates in controlled experiments, and they can communicate very well with their humans. The new trend now, I have a nephew, great nephew, who's 18 months old, and he communicates with American Sign. It's called baby sign, and it allows children to communicate very effectively without the need for skilled vocal actions. Because for most kids, you can't understand them. Only their parents can understand them when they're talking. When my great nephew signs for more or all done also means I don't like it and I don't want any more. He does more this way as opposed to this way, and he's taught us that's appropriate. He makes please, haven't got to thank you yet, but he's communicating his wants, his needs to people who wouldn't be able to understand. Well, I can understand but I hate it. So much better that he signs more, please, more. Errors in language. Because I'm a sociolinguist and my specialty is in the written language and its evolution, typographical errors, misspellings actually derail my train of thought and slam me against the far wall. You've totally lost your communication. In this textbook you have, gee, we're only on chapter, what, 5, 6? And I have found at least 3 egregious typographical errors. When I find typographical errors, I tend to do what many people do, and the status of that book, its credibility as a scholarly textbook drops with each one. As in, you don't care enough about the spelling, perhaps you don't care enough about the research. Feminists, for instance, changed our language a good deal. Before the feminists raised our awareness of it, we didn't know how belittling our language was because we didn't pay attention. It was always that way. If I said, I'm the boss, I'll get my girl to type it up, I'll get my girl to call your girl, we didn't see that it was demeaning, even if our girl was 10 years older than us, because she was a person of less status. And what it turns out is when we use a term that denotes less status, it actually puts that person down. And we weren't aware that that is what was happening in the language. For instance, once we had female police officers, you couldn't say policeman anymore because it didn't sound right. We used to have stewardesses on the airlines, and these were women whose job was to take care of you and your comfort during a flight. Then men demanded equal job opportunity, equal chance to fly across the country, and we couldn't call them a stewardess. They were called stewards, and now they're all called air stewards. When you want to be a steward of the land, it means a person who behaves responsibly towards the land and takes care of it well. If you are a stewardess of the land, it sounds like you're saying coffee, tea, or me. What do you want for your land? So we've had to change. We don't have to deal with we don't have the mailman. We have a mail carrier. We don't have a policeman. We have a police officer. Workmen are now workers. So we have changes in the language. Norms. Let's talk about norms. Norms are prescriptive, what you should do, or proscriptive, what you should not do. and we have norms in our society, and it changes from society to society. What are norms? There is a place in the book that it refers to mores, and I would like to point out here, let me write this down for you. It looks funny. Where's the camera? Mores. Top word. It looks like Moors to rhyme with s'mores. Mores is the plural of mos. And the mores are part of our culture, the system of our values, the ideas, beliefs, knowledge, norms, custom, technology. What is society? A group of people interacting in a specific geographic area, organized in a cooperative manner, who share a culture and a time. This book is a little negligent in leaving out time. Your place in history, if you were born where you were born 100 years before, your socialization would have been very, very different. Even if you were in the same family, what you would have learned as cultural norms would have been different. Ethnocentrism is the word. In fact, please, at the end of your chapters, you find vocabulary lists. I love it. You put them on a flashcard, you study them, you've got the word on one side, the definition on the other, and you learn a new language. For any class you take, you have to learn the language that belongs in that class. You want to be a mathematician, you need to learn math terms. You want to be an engineer, you learn engineering terms. You want to work in restaurants, you learn the terminology. Ethnocentrism is one of those big words, and it's the view of almost any culture that their culture is superior. If you take any culture and say, rank these top 5 cultures according to status and just plain being good people, everybody puts their own culture on the top, which necessarily means you're looking down at other cultures. Cultural relativism. This is a very important term because we have a lot of things going on with that. Cultural relativism says we shouldn't judge this type of action by these people because it's part of their culture. So if these are people where the men wear a hat when they go to worship or cover their heads, that's their culture, we shouldn't say anything. If Catholic women always wear a veil or a hat when they go into their place of worship, that's their culture, we shouldn't say anything. But we do get in trouble when we find things like female genital mutilation. It's their culture, we shouldn't say anything. It hurts people. And so our problem now is there such a thing as absolute wrong or absolute evil? Is it wrong to cut an organ off of a baby girl or a girl prior to the age of puberty generally? Is that wrong, or is that just part of their culture? So some cultural relativism we need to be very patient with and very considerate of, but there's others that we feel the need, should we be stepping in and stopping this because we feel it's inappropriate. Symbols are used for representing something else. A flag, for instance, represents your country or another country, and you have different emotions. They're evoked by seeing different flags. For many in our country right now, the flag of the Confederacy still kind of freaks some people out. For some, it is good old Southern heritage. For others, it is a shocking reminder of slavery, in your face kind of slavery. So we have that. We also have written language. These are not squiggles on a piece of paper. Is a symbol that we have learned to translate. People that tell me, well, they just didn't learn this when they were, the difference between there, and there. I didn't learn that when I was in school. Well,